You got to fix yourself before you can contribute back and be a whole to your family and your community.
You have to anticipate and prepare in advance. You have to train for it. You don't do that the day you give in your papers. It takes 12 to 24 months. The government can't help with all this. It's up to us. Something has to be done. We have to help more. Don't ever quit. There is hope, there is help, but don't ever quit and don't ever give up.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Joe Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course, with insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today.
Joe Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan and host of the Hard Way podcast. I've got my buddies on. Rob and Alex just wrote a book called Warrior to Civilian. They are animals in a good way. This book's coming out in January. How do we transition, gentlemen, these warriors that are so kindly serving our nation, so bravely serving our nation, and then have to do what the rest of us do, come over to the civilian side, I don't know, take it down a notch and make donuts for a living. I cannot do the cool stuff. You know, how do we do that? You just wrote a book on it.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having us here. And, thanks for your listeners. I think I'll take that first, being the veteran, then I'll transition over to Alex, who's the non-veteran, but also a military dad, so he can help. But I think the first part is recognizing that the journey's over and coming to terms 12 to 24 months, start doing the preparation work, getting out, that you could have that loss of identity. I think they need to dig into the benefits they can get through the VA. They're plentiful, but you got to be able to navigate that system. And that leads me into, you need to find a mentor. I wish I had someone like Alex when I was getting out. A lot of it I had to go find on my own. I had mentors that were willing to pick the phone up, make introductions, and take a meeting to find a job. But after that, I'm talking about a true mentor to go dive into yourself and make sure yourself is fixed. And some of the frameworks that Alex and I discuss is Heracles circles of concern. You got to fix yourself before you can contribute back and be a whole to your family and your community.
Rob and I have spent 5 years working on this question. And to answer your question, Joe, with a question, there's a guy named Tom Satterley who it would be a disservice to him to mention one thing in his military resume, but he is one of the heroes of the Battle of Mogadishu. And he runs a foundation called the All Secure Foundation. And his question to veterans is, what makes you think you're prepared for this? Did you train for this? It's a hell of a good question. And at the heart of the answer to the question, if I could take Rob's answers from a different perspective, you have to anticipate and prepare in advance. You have to train for it. You don't do that the day you give in your papers. It takes 12 to 24 months. Do you have wounds that need healing? You have to think about, how are you going to find a path in civilian life, other than running Spartan races on the weekend, that will find you some sense of purpose? You focus on those things, you are way ahead of most people, and those are powerful things. And those things will give you fuel in the tank for this transition, which, by the way, for many folks, never ends. And that's not in a bad way. That's because it's a major life transition.
As I listen to you, Rob and Alex, I think about, you really do need to start 24 months before you're, and maybe even earlier than that. But who does that? Did Michael Jordan start working on his next life on his way out of basketball? Probably not. Like, that's the problem, right? We don't do it. You said the VA has a whole bunch of resources, but are they doing it at an institutional scale where guys and gals can just check in and start working? Or is it like you've got to kind of find it on your own?
You're hitting on one of the themes of why we wrote the book, and Alex's recognition in this, not just the universal themes of trauma, getting through life transitions, but we wanted to write a one-stop practical book that could take the veteran through soup to nuts through this transition to go deal with all this stuff. But the other issue you really highlight is there are systems and processes in place with the VA, but with anywhere between 200 to 250,000 veterans transitioning a year, that's unsustainable. The system can't help everybody, and people are falling through the cracks. And we're seeing that predominantly in combat vets, but there's other people out there with other moral injuries and physical injuries, trauma. We're seeing that suicide rate.
Every person from our government in these areas that we have met is an impressive and very well-intentioned person. The demand, the need is just too big. In fact, we're at a crisis point in our country, and it's not in the papers because we're not at war. So it goes unnoticed. The number of veteran suicides every day has hovered around 21, 22 as reported. There's a lot of evidence that the real number, including indirect suicides, is 44 every day. That is enormously higher than the civilian counterpart. Same goes for incidents of PTSD and other trauma, depression, substance abuse, very indirect things that are incredibly important. What is the impact on marriage? What is the impact on kids and spouses? Spouses and children go through a parallel transition. The government can't help with all this. It's up to us. We all have to chip in. And that has been a powerful motivating force. And when we notice the numbers, these stats, in the context of our historic high number of veterans alive today, something has to be done. We have to help more.
I almost feel like if you're a veteran, you should get to the front of the line. You serve the country. I took a bunch of veterans to a meeting in New York City with a bunch of big executives, special forces, retired operators specifically. And a couple of the guys had to go get suits on, which they didn't need them. But I teared up because I thought to myself, these guys, what they did, how they're trained, the level they play at, should not have to worry about getting a suit to look the part when they come in for an interview. Like, they should get right to the front of the line. I shouldn't have had to organize that. Part of it is, to your point, they didn't train. It's our fault, right? The country's fault. They didn't train to make that transition. And part of it is also, we as civilians, right? I run a civilian-based business. We don't know how to read those resumes or understand that skill set either.
You know, and this, I hope this comes off in a way that is meant to be respectful to the audience and to our veterans and their families. But at the end of the day, it is the responsibility of the veteran and the family to do this and find support, find mentors, navigate it. That is an enormous life transition, life challenge. And there's better ways to do it. And there's better ways to learn about how to reintegrate. And there's ways that are more challenging. Our government can help more. Private companies can help more. There are, of those companies in our country, only 7% have any kind of veteran integration assistance program. That's shocking, because an effective program really makes a difference. And by the way, it lifts up the rest of us. Us civilians and the civilian military or veteran partnership, as evidenced by what Rob and I can do, is enormous. It gives meaning and energy to any company. When you think about the number of veterans entering the workforce every year, 200 to 250,000 every year, because of the high numbers from the end of our 20 years wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, there's a need for this. And so every part of our country, all of us as citizens, we can do more.
Is there an institutionalized program on mentorship? Like, can we marry civilians up with veterans that are transitioning? Does that exist somewhere?
There's a few out there that we recognize in the book that are doing well. But I mean, truth be told, I mean, there's probably 40,000 nonprofits out there that have some sort of veteran initiative. But there are a few out there that we recognize in our book. We kind of list them in the annexes for people, again, the one-stop shop, like, okay, I need help. Okay, go try these top 10 that we found. So we've done the research. We just want to get the knowledge in people's hands.
Well, we have 15 million people in our database. 10 million have crossed the finish line in Spartan. I would imagine a bunch of them would raise their hand and say, I'm happy to help a veteran. So we should figure out how to do that, because I can't handle 250,000 a year on my own, but if we could spread the effort out. I would love it. So the book, I just met with the senior person at Wells Fargo Bank, who is in charge of military affairs for them. I'm going to make that introduction for you and see if they can't take this book as a resource. I believe they have about 10,000 within the Wells Fargo system that are veterans. And based on the number you're throwing around, 250,000 per year, It would make sense that a company the size of Wells Fargo has that many.
Yep.
What do you recommend we do as civilians?
It's a great question. We could take a page from the book of The Greatest Generation. And this is a common reaction, but it's a good one. We could recognize those who have stood on the wall for us, who make all of this possible. I don't mean a glib, thank you for your service, catch you later. I mean, make an investment in your community. When veterans are understood, not in a way of looking down on them or a handout, but recognized as among our elder warrior statespeople, then if it's done in a genuine way, that is a significant factor in the reintegration process. That is a page we also learn from the origins of this country and ancient Greek and Roman societies. When there's that recognition, it's a part of the reintegration. We can invite them. We can have veterans give talks. We have much to learn from veterans. The last 5 years have been the most in working with Rob. In our hundreds of interviews have been incredibly eye-opening for me and my family, and has changed our sense of purpose and our aspiration for contribution. I think we can make a contribution at the companies we work at so that there's some kind of a program that does this and also helps veterans. Veterans with effective mentoring at companies collaborate better. The productivity goes up significantly, and we avoid the turnover and churn involved. Veteran turnover in their first jobs is 44%. They leave within 1 year. By the end of year 2, it's 80%. Those are enormously higher than civilian counterparts. It's not good for anybody. We can help at the companies we work at be part of a veteran integration program that's effective. There's a lot we can do.
I was just thinking, obviously, any one of our events anywhere in the world can be rendezvous points for veterans. We could organize that with both of you and other organizations if you want. We should. I shouldn't say if you want, we should. But I could also do something right here, I was thinking, as you were speaking, right in Lake Nona in Florida. My friend owns Lake Nona. We could do something right in, once a month. Food is on us. Big veteran reintegration program, mentorship connection. But then I started thinking, as you were speaking, do the veterans, are they nervous about coming out do they not want to do that because it feels like their perception is maybe you know what I mean? Like maybe they're too proud.
Yeah, if I can answer that, maybe dovetail back from the veteran side. What they should be looking at for this is we all served under the same why, to service of the Constitution. Okay, that's going to change when you take that off, right? You can be a citizen soldier and can continue a federal line of work. I understand that. But they have to understand they need to go back and identify and work on the self. They need to understand they need to make the choice to control the narrative, control their own story now. Because they're going to come out there, and the hundreds of interviews we've done, we did not meet anyone who had a smooth transition without some sort of life stressor, some human behavior that kind of came out of nowhere and took them over, drained the bank account, death in the family, divorce, loss of job, chose the wrong career path, quickly changed again. We heard every story. People that hit rock bottom, people who lost extremities, people confined to a wheelchair. They have to be able to control the narrative. They have to make that choice. For the veteran side, we operated in this teammate self, right? You can put mission and God in front of that to fulfill a why. Okay, you need to flip that and go back and identify what is wrong with yourself and do the hard work.
Can you just elaborate on the power of choice? Because it's something that is so powerful.
So in the military structure, we're told to do almost everything. Where to be, how to dress, what to do. These are your orders. You'll be moving here. You're going to be fulfilling this role. I mean, all that's gone. You're regaining all that power of choice. So you have to be willing to make that choice to go get better. You have to be willing to do this for your family, your significant other, your kids. These are the choices that are coming down for the veteran that they now get to have. They get to have a choice in all these things. We talk about, even when picking a job, you look at what industry do I want to work in? What function within that industry? What region of the U.S. do I want to live in? Those are all choices they now have. And that's where mentors like Alex, and I'll say this, please don't take the mentorship for granted if someone's willing to extend their time.
We got to figure out a way. Maybe your group and our group maybe we start with one race and just see, maybe we could go to, by the way, maybe we can go to Google and Meta and say, help us find the veterans in that 100-mile radius from that event we're putting on. It's on us, no charge. And we just want to shake hands, thank the veterans, and let them know that, there's 8,000 or 9,000 people literally at that event that would be willing to be mentors if they need it.
It's a great creative idea. I think we would stand with you in supporting that.
The hardest part would be finding them and getting them there. But maybe some of these big companies would help us do that.
At some of these big companies, you could find 10,000 veterans in a heartbeat.
Yeah, so let's work on that together because look, it's not good enough. I know this is going to frustrate you maybe, and you've spent 5 years on it. It's not good enough, as I've learned, to write a book. It's not good enough to put on a race. We actually have to go find them and get them and shake their hand and talk. Like, there's actual work to do,
There's a tremendous amount of work, and we feel the same way. Writing a book is one thing. Getting it into folks' hands that can make a difference in their lives and talking about it in a way that it becomes practical, as General McChrystal told us we got to be, is essential. And we're devoted to that. If you think we should be an event with you and we can help, give us 5 minutes notice.
Yeah, let us know. Let's take a look at our schedule. And anybody listening out there, think about this as well, where we can find the most veterans relative to where our events are. And let's try to energize one of them with all our connections and see. I mean, we got Fenway coming up. I know it's short notice, short fuse, but let's see what we could do at Fenway. If it's one veteran, okay. If it's 100 or 1,000, that's fine too. It's better. So let's figure that out. And then let's try to do it at scale. Because what the hell are we doing watching Netflix and eating pumpkin pie when we could be helping veterans? Are we recommending civilians read this book as well?
That was one of the criteria I had with Alex in writing this was I wanted to expand the aperture past special operations to include the entire military and go beyond. So first responders could pick this up. We actually put this in the hands of a couple of people who went through life tragedies, death in family, traumatic divorce. And they all came back and said, okay, look, I get it. This is a field manual on how to get out of the military, but chapters, refining purpose or dealing with guilt, the world of emotions, like these are all the things that I'm going through. And your frameworks are amazing. And I said, I sat back, I looked at this, like there is in Alex, given Alex's education in Greek mythology, these things work. We've seen them. And Joe, you've applied these as well with Spartan.
So we recommend everybody pick up the book. Book's available January 28th.
Available for pre-order today, which we would love for people to do. And at the publication date, when the hard copy is available, is Jan 28th, 2025.
So I think if people are out there listening and they have organizations, companies, charitable entities, that we need to work together and get involved here because we owe it to the veterans, right? Many of us didn't have to go and stand on that wall. And so we owe this to them. How do people find you guys?
We do have a website. So it's heroes, HEROES-journey.net. We can be found on there, kind of break down the book, who we are, kind of the mission forward here with what we want to take with veterans.
Our emails are there, and we have a request for veterans and spouses and family members to tell us their stories. We're inviting veterans and their families, as we have from dozens of others in the book and will be on our website. We're inviting people to tell us their experience and their transition. And that can be a powerful way of beginning this process.
By the way, this is not going to be easy. I hope you guys know this. You write a great book, which you have, for a great purpose, which you have, doesn't mean we're going to be able to get it in everybody. So anybody listening, we got to help get it in the hands of those that are transitioning. A friend of mine wrote a book. He had 30 years of work on it with Cornell University, Oxford, and the country of China. And he proved conclusively, I don't want to get into what he proved, but because half the country will say that's bullshit, and the other half will say that's exactly right. But again, he couldn't get people to buy in at scale. So we do this great work. You guys have done this great work. Now those listening, me included, have to figure out how to get it into the hands of people.
So Joe, let me ask you a question. You write a newsletter called The Hard Way. Is anything worthwhile easy?
Nothing worthwhile is easy. You are right. And I did some videos about that Just by definition, for you to be successful and achieve whatever you want to achieve, you have to fail. And the sooner you could recognize that you're going to fail a bunch on the way to being successful, right? There's going to be a bunch of doors that close. The publisher's not going to want to publish your book. It's not edited correctly. You find out after it's too late that you didn't put commas where you're supposed to. And like all these things have to happen to make you better so that you do succeed at some point. But that's not saying it's fun. It's not fun. It's just part of the deal.
It is. I have a lot of demerits from military schools that can prove that as well. Yeah.
Anything I missed that you guys want to say?
Yeah. When it's hard in your psyche, in your body, in your emotions, don't ever quit. There is hope. There is help. There's new medicines. There's tremendous opportunity with new therapies. If you're careful and thoughtful, there can be a role for those with trauma and injury in the realm of psychedelic drugs in a responsible way. But don't ever quit and don't ever give up.
I will say on that note, guys, gals listening out there, if you're in a dark place, I get bad news every day. Every single day, a giant boulder gets dropped on my head. I'm not kidding. I don't know when it's going to be, but sometime between the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, a boulder gets dropped on my head. Something got fucked up in our organization globally. Something screwed up in my family. Like, just always happens every single day. And what I found is if I could just shut that off, get to bed, go for a walk, do burpees, whatever it may be, and then just start my new day tomorrow, it's less of a big deal tomorrow. And the day after, it's even less of a big deal. And it's kind of like running 1,000 miles. It's one telephone pole at a time. Like, that's just make it to the next telephone pole. It's going to suck. Your feet are going to bleed. The blisters are going to be there. Your hips are broke. But one telephone pole at a time.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Joe, you talk about in your 7 pillars we reference in the book, and it's having the mindset to continue on, push through it. And I guess I would leave everybody with what you both have expanded on, just Churchill. Right? When you're going through hell, keep going.
And by the way, there's going to be times when you're freezing and you wish you were in hell because it's hotter. So it is all perspective. You guys are awesome. Thanks for coming. We're going to get everybody out there to mentor. You and I, we're going to do something in Fenway. It's going to be great.